Let's talk some chess. We have game 10 of the World Championship today. Coming into this game, the score was 5-4. Jan Nepomniachtchi with 5 points, Ding Liren with 4. You're trying to get to 7.5 points because it's a 14-game match. So if you get to 7.5, you have the majority of the points and you win the match. So Jan is inching closer with his 5 points. Ding would really like to equalize here, win this game, and bring the score back to 5-5, or I guess back to even. So Ding starts off with c4. He's playing with white pieces. The English, and then Jan responds with knight to f6. We have knight to c3, and then Jan pushing in the center with e5. Ding responds with f3. This develops a piece and attacks the undefended pawn, and Jan defends it with knight to c6. We have e4 by Ding, so stopping the advance of that pawn in the center, and then Jan brings his bishop out to c5. So now 3 pieces nicely defended and sort of controlling the center of the board. And here Ding makes a interesting move. He plays knight to e5, takes the pawn, and this looks like a knight sacrifice because you just took a pawn and the knight's going to take back. Something, we see this move in Halloween Gambits, one of my favorite openings to play frequently, and you give away a piece and hopefully get rapid expansion and just a big attack out of it. Obviously not something you play in the World Championship. So what we see here is after Jan takes back with the knight on e5, you get the immediate d4. And now this obviously is forking the bishop and the knight. You can't take back with the bishop because it's defended by the queen. So Jan here just, I'm going to make it a little bit louder. Jan brings his bishop to safety on b4 and pins the knight to the king. And now Ding takes the knight on e5. So now white is currently up a pawn, but you do have these double pawns, and the pawn on e4 is technically undefended because although it seems like it's defended by the knight cannot move because it's pinned to the king. And indeed, we have Jan equalizing material and taking with the knight on e4. Ding brings out his queen to f3. This comes with an attack on the knight, and it also starts to eye this f7 pawn, which could get weak, eventually, especially if the bishop can come and join the attack on c4. Jan tries to trade off pieces and just takes the knight on c3. We have pawn takes. You obviously can't take with the queen because then the bishop would take back, and this forces the bishop to retreat to c5. And this was actually a pretty funny moment in the game. Jan made this move and kind of gave Ding a look and then got up and walked away. And I think the commentators, Caruana, were talking about, this is sort of a surprising move. It is the move recommended by the computer, but maybe this was not something that Ding had in his preparation. Now you have these double pawns, which aren't very helpful, and this bishop is basically cemented here on c5. You can't kick it out with any pawns, and it's going to be difficult to deal with this. So now Ding moves his queen to g3, and the next couple moves, and many of these moves, of course, are just the best moves recommended by the computers. Obviously, these guys are top of the top and just banging out computer moves, and it's no difference here. So queen to g3, you're attacking the weak pawn on g7 that's currently undefended. And here, I think many of us would just go ahead and castle king side, protecting the pawn, but this runs into bishop to g5, and this will lead to a very big advantage for white. So the bishop is obviously attacking the queen, and there's not too much you can do about it. For example, if you move the queen to e8, then you get bishop to f6. And now, you're threatening mate on g7. The only real defense here is playing g6, but then you get queen to g5, and it's going to be very difficult to stop the checkmate coming in. So this would be a very big attack for white, obviously something that Jan doesn't want. So instead of castling, he actually plays king to f8, and kind of a funny move. I never expect to play this move, and I never expect to see this sort of kind of king to f8 in a World Championship. But here we are. It is the recommended move by the engine, and you're protecting your g7 pawn. So now Ding develops another piece. He brings the bishop to e2, and we have d6. Protecting this bishop, even though it doesn't really need protecting, but more importantly, opening up the light squared bishop to get into the game. We have Ding bringing out his bishop to f4, adding some protection to this pawn. Queen is developed to g7, adding some attack to the e5 pawn, and Ding brings his rook over to d1, getting ready in case this file opens up to control it and hopefully launch a counter strike. Jan now, and this is the move recommended by the engine, he pushes h5, adding some pressure to the king side, and Ding ignores it for now and just castles and puts his king to safety. The pawn marches on, though, to h4, obviously comes an attack on the queen, and it's protected twice, so the queen has to move, and Ding decides to put it on d3, where now you have this queen and rook battery on the potentially soon-to-be open d file. Jan is just merciless, though. He keeps pushing those pawns on the king side. He plays g5, comes to an attack on the bishop, and instead of moving the bishop first, Ding has this sort of in-between move where he takes on d6. Obviously, this comes to an attack on the queen, so you have to take back. And now we just are going to have a series of trades on d6. So pawn takes, bishop takes, queen takes, this comes with check, bishop takes back, and rook takes. And when all is said and done, you've just gotten a bunch of pieces off the board, or and are just left with, each side is left with 2 rooks and a light squared bishop. And Ding is up 1 pawn, but it's not an amazing pawn. It's these 2 sort of stacked pawns, and it's going to be hard to turn that into any sort of meaningful advantage. So Jan finally completes development with bishop to e6. This comes with an attack on the weak c4 pawn, although it currently is protected by Ding's own light squared bishop. And we have f4 trying to push back on these advanced king pawns. The king advances to e7, improving the position, getting into the game, and attacking this threatening rook on the 6th rank. The rook retreats to d4, now adding protection to these 2 pawns. And Ding takes the pawn, and Jan takes the pawn, and Ding doubles up his rooks on the 4th rank. So hoping to control the board and just win a protracted endgame, and maybe, take some advantage of his extra pawn, even though they are doubled up. Jan pushes on. It's a nice little rhyme that I just said now. Plays h3, and Ding pushes g4. This is not en passant, so you can't just take back after. That doesn't work. So he pushes g4 and trying to create a pass pawn and counterplay of his own. We have rook to c8 by Jan, adding another attacker to this weak c4 pawn. And Ding improves his own king's position with king to f2. The rook comes to c5, maybe preparing to double up on the c file. But first we have Ding playing a4, and then Jan goes to track down this pawn, which is currently undefended, on a4. Ding retreats the bishop to d1. This is a nice bishop because it's supporting these 2 kind of pawn islands and making sure that they don't fall. And Jan tries to break it open a bit more with b6. We have king to g3. Now this is attacking the h3 pawn in case the rook ever leaves its defense. It also adds a defender to the g4 pawn, which is now defended 4 times by both rooks, the bishop, and the king. Jan has a nice rook lift, rook to h6, and then we have Ding playing rook to e4, pinning the bishop to the king. So Jan breaks the pin, brings back the king to the 8th rank with king to f8. Ding, and these are all mostly, in most of the case, just the best move recommended by the engine. Ding plays rook to d8 check. We have king escaping to g7, and then the rook is brought to a8, getting in behind the position, hopefully going to disrupt these pawns and gobble them up and create lanes for his own passed pawns. Here Jan actually says, okay, take that pawn, I'm going to move my rook to c5, and Ding does take the pawn, but this allows Jan to take the pawn on c4, since now it's defended by the rook. And then we have Ding doubling up his pawns on the e file, but Jan responds by doubling up his own pawns on the c file, and then Ding looks to challenge them and get some pieces off the board and use his 1 pawn advantage, and he plays rook to e5. We have a couple of trades, and then funny little move here by Jan. He plays bishop to b3, which appears to just give away a bishop for free. But what happens after Ding takes, which he does, is rook takes on c3 with check. This obviously forks the bishop and the king. So after the king moves, you get rook takes on b3. And it looks like this was a bad sort of sequence for Ding because he just appeared to give up a pawn, and now the material is equal, but now he has this really nice b5 move. And after the rook moves to a4, Ding takes the pawn on d6, rook takes on a4, and king takes on h3. So Ding maintained his 1 pawn lead, even though it looked like he had sort of gone down a pawn. We have now f5, and again, kind of a funny move here, just looks like you're sacrificing the pawn. So Ding takes the pawn, but then you get this rook to f5, and you're just not going to be able to defend this pawn if you are Ding. It is now finally a passed pawn, but you're not going to be able to defend it from the king and the rook at the same time. Ding tries, but with rook to b5, but then you just get king to f6, and the pawn is going to fall. So Ding brings his king to g3, but then we have rook takes, king takes, and now we finally reached a king, and pawn endgame, and this is a drawn position. The black king controls the squares that white will need to promote the pawn, and they actually continued playing here. Ding played h4, Jan retreated the king to g6. I think Jan looked annoyed at one point that they weren't going to draw. Obviously it's going to be impossible to get the pawn and the king past the black king, but here Ding just played the really funny h5 check. Jan took the pawn on h5, and by definition this is now a draw. So kind of a really tightly played game. There's a little bit of tension in the middle, some creative moves, but just really technically tight by Jan. Traded pieces down, never was really in any threat of a big attack, surfacing and wiping out his position. So just a really neat game, great accuracy as always, and definitely fun to watch. And so hope you enjoyed it. We have 4 more games in this amazing World Championship. Hopefully we see some more fireworks before it's over. But in any case, drop a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.